Heiko was a depressed loser who was treated like trash by his uber-rich family. After losing his mom and his right hand in an accident, he lost his inheritance and his ability to wake in sorrow, which was the last thing he had to live for. However, everything changed when his dad bought him a wife who hides her big melons to help with his walking problems. He felt sorry that she was forced into marriage to cover a debt, so he covered the frightened girl with a blanket before showing her her room. He woke up the next morning feeling like a constipated cow shit once again, but he noticed Yuzuki cleaning the mansion happily. She even offered to clean his face, but he opted to do it himself. She still helped whack his face and noticed dark circles around his eyes thanks to sleepless nights. He quickly distanced himself from her back into his room. She continued to invade his privacy while diligently working, and in the afternoon, she showed up carrying a basket 3 times her size. At that point, Heiko wondered if the creators were trying to pull a Beauty and the Beast ripoff, but Yuzuki took it too far by mending his sacred pants that someone used for target practice. He finally found some quiet time in the bathroom only for the shrimp to show up to wash his back, making him scared shitless as she was killing him with kindness. The one-armed gloom lord eventually let her wash him and thought she was probably a princess who only knew rainbows. He then asked if she even cared about anything, to which she said she had 2 worries. His tune immediately changed, which got him to recall she was sold to him. Instead of saying something deep, she revealed her fabulous hair that was just too much and wavy, unlike Rapunzel who had straight shiny hair. Her antics made him laugh, since it was honestly ridiculous, but she didn't take offense. Instead, she promised to accept the hair if he continued to smile. He yeeted her away since she was getting on his nerves. She recalled how she had to reveal to her friends in school that she was dropping out since her parents were neck-deep in debt. Although they looked worried, she reassured them that she'd do her best to take care of her husband-to-be, even though he turns out to be shitty. That evening turned out to be New Year's Eve, and Heiko was left to recall he was a good-for-nothing trash son. He walked around the house while the harsh words of his family numbers were played inside his brain like a newly released album. While their words haunted him, Yuzuki showed up and put on the fire before politely asking to stay with him through the night. He then asked her if she hated living with a pessimist recluse with a useless aunt, asking if she felt it was torture. But despite his ranting, she served him warm milk. She noticed he seemed to like it, so he told him stuff about her time in boarding school. She even sang a song that reminded him about his dead mother. He then opened up to her that he was fed up and wished he'd sleep and never wake up, and as he spoke, she patted his head gently. This time, her kindness got to him, and as he rested on her bosom, he asked why she treated him well, unlike his family. She then revealed she was bought for 10,000 and was scared. However, on her arrival, he treated her well, so she decided to reciprocate his kindness. As he freaked out that she was that naive, she asked that they sleep together for New Year's Eve, so he got even more flustered. In the room, he began to panic as he didn't know how to act. So the clueless virgin pulled out a magazine and speed-read everything like his future depended on it. However, Yuzuki showed up with her own food and went straight to bed, leaving him to swim in his self-made galaxy of stupidity. Once the lights went off, she started reevaluating her choices, but promised to keep herself for him alone. As she fell asleep, she latched onto his arm, and for the first time in months, he slept peacefully and was woken up by her the following morning. She wished him a happy new year, after which she served him a bowl of soup. One taste of the soup made him recall how she promised to love a guy like him, and he too wondered if he would be capable of loving her. The following day, Heiko went into the bathroom only to find Yuzuki using it, so they both freaked out like kids. Once she got dressed, she apologized to him, but he claimed he didn't see anything since the room was foggy, and he was also nearsighted. She then saved him fish that she deboned thoughtfully considering his condition, then she got close to him. She then began acting all clingy, which was awkward to him. They then went outside to receive a letter from a delivery man sent by his father. In the letters, his dad revealed his ugly sisters were receiving marriage offers. However, the fact that he was a dropout and a partial invalid, abandoned in the mountain, could ruin the matches. To salvage the situation, he was to be announced dead due to an accident as a last duty to his family. A few moments later, Yuzuki came to bug him about dinner, but he told her to buzz off. However, she continued to pester him until he screamed at her. That night she woke up when she noticed he moved. However, she didn't see him. The following day she went on with her work, but he stayed indoors out of sight, so she summoned the courage to walk into his room and was about to leave a plate of food for him when she noticed he was shivering and was down with a terrible fever. As she cared for him, Heiko was dreaming about how he was being left behind by his family, who considered him a dead man. He woke up saying he wanted to die for real, since it would be better that way. He began laughing and said it would also benefit her if he died since she'd be free, so he wondered what approach he could take. He thought it'd be great to come back as a vengeful spirit, but Yuzuki told him to stop joking around. He then told her his father had pronounced him dead, and was about to cry, so she stopped him from saying more hurtful things that would plunge him into depression further. He was about to throw up, but she still held him, and helped him through his struggles until he fell asleep in her arms. When he woke up, he noticed she spread out her kimono that he soiled earlier. He soon found her in the kitchen, and when she asked why he got up from bed, he said he got bored sleeping alone. She then made it look like he was missing her, but he quickly denied it. She went ahead to check his fever, after which she dressed him up like a big baby. He started feeling guilty for ruining her favorite outfit, so he decided to ask her to Tokyo out of the blue. They soon arrived at Tokyo Station, where Yuzuki was beaming with delight, since it was her first time seeing stylish people in buildings. After a while, Hiko was already feeling like it was a bad idea, as he hoped not to run into someone familiar. He quickly took her to a fancy mall where everything was as beautiful as they were expensive. Yuzuki turned her excitement up a notch when she saw the admirable materials, but she still had to confirm if Hiko could afford spending so much on her. After shopping, he apologized for soiling her kimono, and asked if it was important, to which she responded that it was the first one she ever sold, and this only made him more guilty. She said it was all right, since she also used the fabric she bought for her well, and it will be the first kimono her lover and husband bought for her. He then took her to the restaurant to try some crepes, but she was so all over it, and wanted to feed him some, causing the old hags around to drown in jealousy. He quickly made her stop drawing attention to them, but as things calmed down, he recalled the last time he had ice cream, which only reminded him of his father's words. She noticed he was struggling to be in public, so she made them go back home. On the train, she revealed that she told her parents to assume she was dead, not because she was going to die, but so that she could start a new life of happiness without them holding her back. For the next month, Yuzuki worked on her kimono at every moment she had to spare until she finished making an admirable kimono that made her look like a princess. She even teased him for staring too much, and just as they were hitting it off, Tamako, his little sister, who was modeled after Azula, showed up along with her things and a bunch of dick-chads at her command. When he asked what she wanted, she said she came to relax in the family villa. When he tried to protest, since it was his home, she said he was supposed to be dead. Hiko couldn't believe the entitled brat, so he told her that his home wasn't a vacation spot where she could come and go as she pleased. Tamako told him she'd do as she damn well pleased and said she was going to move in. She then paid her muscle-headed busboys and thanked them for helping her carry all her luggage up the mountain. After they left, Tamako turned to Yuzuki and gave her a pat on the head, saying she was an adorable little girl. When they eventually went inside, Tamako picked a bigger room with a view of the garden, so Yuzuki helped her settle in before she told her that her room was right next door, and asked not to hesitate if she needed anything. Later on, Yuzuki and Hiko were in the kitchen, and as she chopped some vegetables, he apologized for his sister's rudeness. The next moment, Tamako walked in, and Hiko asked why she had come to his home, but she ignored his question and told him about how their family had been putting on Grammy-worthy performances about his death, because they wanted to get their sister married. Before she left the kitchen, she told Yuzuki that she would take her dinner in her room and asked her to bring it there. The next morning, Yuzuki took Hiko on a walk to the mountain, and when they arrived at a big tree which had an Inari statue inside it, Yuzuki told Hiko that the statue was the guardian deity of the mountain, before she showed him the spring which was close by. After drinking from it, she urged Hiko to do the same, which he did, but she believed he didn't have enough, so she scooped some in her hands and held it up to him. Hiko drank from her hands, causing her to blush like a love-struck schoolgirl, so he apologized, thinking he'd done something inappropriate. On their way back home, they took a detour through a field of flowers, and as Hiko watched Yuzuki enjoy the moment, he realized that she was the light at the end of his dark and gloomy tunnel. Later in the day, Tamako watched as Yuzuki made some caramel sweets, and even though she was amazed by Yuzuki's skill, she continued playing the role of the popular mean girl. Yuzuki found it adorable how she was trying to act uninterested, and told her that she was doing the same thing Hiko usually did. When the candy was ready, Yuzuki presented it to Hiko, and told him she made them so he could snack on it while they read. She even took one out and popped it into his mouth, but Tamako, who was an ambassador of the anti-romantic culture, told them they were acting like a couple of fools. When Yuzuki offered her a piece of the candy, she threw it on the floor and stormed out of the room. Later that night, as Tamako lay in bed, she remembered how her father had paid people to spend time with her, and how the girls at her school made fun of her, which had forced her to become the ice queen that was now. Suddenly, there was a thunderclap, and she remembered Yuzuki telling her that her room was next door, so she got up and went to the door. However, she was hesitant to knock, because she didn't want to appear as a scared wimp before Yuzuki. But before she could change her mind, Yuzuki opened the door and asked what she wanted. Tamako told her that she wanted to use the bathroom, and begged her to come with her. As they made their way to the bathroom, there was another clap of thunder and a flash of lightning, which scared Yuzuki shitless. But when she turned to look at Tamako, she noticed the poor girl that pissed herself. Yuzuki immediately took her to the bathroom, poured water on her body, and asked her to get into the bath, while she went outside to start a fire to heat the bath. After Tamako's bath, Yuzuki helped brush her hair, but Tamako couldn't help but wonder why she was being nice to her, after the way she treated her. Her thoughts were soon cut off by the sound of thunder, which made her hug Yuzuki in fear, so Yuzuki suggested they sleep together in her room. While they lay in the dark, Tamako admitted that she had dropped out of school, and because her father had called her a disappointment, she left home. Yuzuki asked if she had felt alone, and Tamako told her that relying on people made one weak. But Yuzuki didn't think the same way, so she told her that if she was her little sister, she would give her all the support she needed. Tamako then asked if she could call her big sister, and Yuzuki said she could. The next morning, Heiko was sure he'd smoked some trees, because he couldn't understand why Tamako and Yuzuki were acting like besties as they made some snacks. When the snacks were ready, he confirmed that Tamako looked happier than he'd ever seen before. Yuzuki then offered him a biscuit, but Tamako took the plate and kicked him out of the room, saying she didn't need his bad vibes stinking up the place. A few months later, Heiko was reading outside when Yuzuki joined him. The moment he laid eyes on her, he recalled the promise she made to love him, and began to wonder if she had fallen in love with him yet. However, he tried not to dwell on it, because he didn't believe anyone could love a Grinch. Yuzuki then stood up to leave, but she suddenly felt dizzy and fell on his chest, causing him to panic. Yuzuki assured him that she was fine, but when she realized she was resting on his injured arm, she immediately apologized. Heiko told her that he was still strong enough to support her weight, and said he didn't mind if she wanted to rest for a while, so she took him up on his offer. After a while, she walked back into the house, but Heiko heard a loud noise, so he went to see if she was okay, and found her lying unconscious on the floor. While he was trying to figure out what to do, Tamako turned the corner and found them. She immediately rushed over and checked Yuzuki's temperature before attempting to carry her to her room. Heiko tried to help, but she pointed out that his arm would be a hindrance, so he suggested they lay Yuzuki in his room because it was closer. After laying her there, Tamako said she would go into the village to find a doctor, but asked Heiko to find something to help cool Yuzuki's body. After she left, Heiko went to the well to get some water, but his injured hand made it impossible for him to carry it properly, so he ended up spilling the whole thing. Tamako soon returned with a doctor and a nurse, and when she found her brother cleaning up his mess, she did back whatever sarcastic comment she was about to make before taking the bowl away. Sometime later, after the doctor finished checking on Yuzuki, Heiko met him at the door and thanked him for helping Yuzuki. He gave him some money for the treatment, which the doctor collected rudely before he informed Heiko that Yuzuki was overworked. Heiko was surprised by this, but that didn't stop the grumpy old man from accusing him of being a nasty slave driver. He also added that Tamako was a spoiled rich brat, who had treated the villagers as though they were her servants, and all she had to do was pay them off. To make things worse, he said that not everything could be fixed with money, and pointed out Heiko's right hand as one of them. Just then, Tamako joined them and offered to show the doctor and nurse out. She made sure they didn't have the chance to make any nasty comments, as she glared at them like the spawn of the devil. After they left, she scolded her brother for being a coward and not defending himself when the foolish old man had accused him wrongly. However, she noticed Heiko look haunted, and he confirmed her suspicions by blaming himself for Yuzuki's condition. Tamako told him not to blame himself and promised to look after Yuzuki until she got well. That night, while Tamako took a bath, Heiko went to check on Yuzuki and found her struggling to breathe. He nearly had a heart attack when he noticed blood on the bandages around her chest, but calmed down after finding out that she'd bruised her hand trying to rip off the bandage. Yuzuki kept asking him to take off the bandage, so he took a pair of scissors out of a drawer and cut the bandage. But to his surprise, Yuzuki's oversized plots bounced around. When Yuzuki finally opened her eyes and realized Heiko had been the one to help her, quickly covered herself up before admitting that her milkshakes were a big problem. However, Heiko wasn't interested in her plot problems, so he cut her off and apologized for overworking her. He told her that the best thing would be for them to end their engagement, because he didn't want her to suffer with him. Yuzuki then hugged him. Heiko's face was pushed up against her chest as she told him she would remain by his side. The next morning, during breakfast, Tameko announced that would be returning home because she had decided to become a doctor, which shocked them. After breakfast, Heiko and Yuzuki followed Tameko to her room, and Heiko asked how she planned to become a doctor, so she told him that she already spoken to their uncle who owned a clinic. As she packed up her things, Yuzuki asked her to tell them the real reason she wanted to become a doctor. Tameko then admitted that all her life, she had believed that she didn't need to help others, but when Yuzuki fell sick, she didn't think twice about doing the things she'd mocked others for. She said that if she'd been knowledgeable about medicine, she would have treated Yuzuki by herself. Later on, while Tameko was sitting outside, Heiko joined her and thanked her, causing her to look at him like he was the king of stupidity. Realizing he'd said something dumb, Heiko quickly explained that he was grateful that she had come even though she didn't like him. Just then, Yuzuki arrived carrying some blankets and suggested that they spend the night together, shocking the siblings. That night, as Tameko slept, Heiko reached over and patted her head, as he told her that he knew she would become a great doctor, and also apologized for not being there for her, even though both of them were very alike. However, he soon realized he was acting like a sappy fool and quickly took his hand back. The following morning, Tameko boarded a train going to Kido, and Yuzuki and Heiko were there to send her off. After Yuzuki handed her the bento box she made, Tameko asked Heiko to come closer, making him think she was going to scold him again. But to his surprise, Tameko told him that the next time he wanted to touch her head, he should do so when she was awake, making him realize that she'd heard everything he said to her. Days after Tameko's departure, Yuzuki informed Heiko that she was going into the village to buy some things, which made him recall the doctor's harsh words towards him. At the village, the villagers stared and talked about Yuzuki as she walked by, but she didn't seem to mind them. When she stopped to buy some vegetables, Heiko suddenly ran to the market, so she asked why he had come. He told her that he needed to buy some books, and then offered to carry her shopping basket. As they walked together, he hoped Yuzuki wasn't bothered by the villagers gossiping about her. But when he looked in her direction, he was surprised to see her smiling, so he asked if she was okay. Yuzuki told him that she was happy that he had come shopping with her for the first time since they went to Tokyo. After shopping for a while, Yuzuki stopped to buy some notepads, which she intended to use to write letters to Tameko and Midori. When she noticed the vendor next to them was selling books, she pointed him out to Yuzuki, who showed he was a true nerd by how excited he was to see the books. This made Yuzuki ask why he loved books so much, so he told her that while he was growing up, his parents didn't give a rat's ass about him. He said he'd found comfort between the pages of his books, because they helped him forget the fact that his parents regarded him as a worthless piece of trash. That evening, Yuzuki prepared so much food that Heiko asked if they were expecting the president, but she told him she'd done it because it was his birthday. She admitted that Tameko had told her about it, so she decided to make the day special for him. She then pulled out a bookmark she'd made as a present for him and gave it to him. Heiko was shocked because that was the first time in his life he received a gift, and the moment she told him a happy birthday, Heiko felt like his inner child had been healed. Almost immediately, he pulled her in for a hug and promised to hold on to her gift forever. Suddenly, they heard a loud sound, so Heiko excused himself to check it out, thinking the cat had gotten inside the house. However, when he opened the door, he saw a young girl sitting at his table reading a magazine. Next to her was the broken caramel jar, so he demanded to know who she was and why she had broken in. The girl got up and walked towards him before telling him that she lived in the village and wanted to say hello. Heiko didn't believe for one second that she had come for a friendly visit, because it gave off the vibes of an unhinged psycho. She then teased him for his magazine collection, and told him that she'd be willing to play with him if he wanted to get down and dirty, which caught him off guard until she began laughing and teasing him for foolishly falling for her lies. When she tried to leave, Heiko asked what she would do about the broken caramel jar, but she ran away so fast, you'd think she was Speedy Gonzales. After Heiko closed the window, Yuzuki came into the room, asking if he'd let the cat out. Heiko told her that he had done so and apologized for the broken jar, which made her worry that the cat had been hurt. She then tried to go look out the window, but Heiko blocked her path, saying she didn't have to worry about it. He decided to talk about the bookmark she had given him to distract her, but when he reached into his pocket to pull it out, he couldn't find it. It was at that moment he realized he'd been robbed by a smooth criminal, so he ran out of the house and made his way to the village, without realizing that Yuzuki had smelled a woman's perfume inside his room. Meanwhile, Namiwanebi felt proud of herself for swiping Hiko's wallet without him noticing. Last as Hiko rode into the village, he saw the girl slip into a house, so he followed her intending to get his bookmark back. He overheard the girl's father ask for the money she'd stolen from Hiko. From their conversation, he'd understood that the father had been the mastermind behind the theft, but the girl stood her ground and refused to hand the money over to him. The man then slapped her and took Hiko's wallet from her before counting the money. When he realized that it was a small amount, he began to beat her up while her brothers tried to stop him. Outside, Hiko cowered in fear as the sounds coming from the house reminded him of how his father used to treat him. He then decided to return home as he wasn't brave enough to confront the man. When he arrived home, Yuzuki welcomed him, but he told her he was tired and headed straight to bed. The next morning, Yuzuki woke him up for breakfast, and while they were eating, she invited him to go on a walk with her, but he refused, saying he had something to do. After leaving home, he went straight to Ryo's house to get his bookmark, but hoped that her deadbeat father wouldn't be home as he knocked on the door. When no one answered, he heard voices coming from the back, so he went to check it out. But when he turned the corner, he found her taking a bath. So she screamed and called in a cultured peeping Tom. After she got dressed, Hiko apologized for barging in on her like that, and she demanded he paid her 100 yen for almost popping her cherry with his eyes. Hiko reminded her that she'd stolen his wallet, which made her say she had expected he would cry like a baby and not come knocking on her door like a loan shark trying to collect a debt. As Hiko watched her speak, he couldn't help but get scared as she reminded him of a back alley thug. She then asked if he wanted his wallet back, but he told her he wanted the bookmark she'd stolen along with it. Ryo acted like she had no idea what he was talking about, and before he could describe it to her, they were interrupted by one of her brothers. The boy wanted her to help with a maths problem, but Ryo said she didn't know how to solve the problem and told him to ask Hiko. Hiko tried to refuse, but she showed him the bookmark and threatened to destroy it, so he agreed. While he was helping the boy, Ryo asked why the bookmark was important to him, and he told her Yuzuki had given it to him. In the end, he spent the entire day helping Ryo's brothers with their homework, and just as he was about to leave, they heard their drunk-ass father approaching. Ryo asked him to go out the back so he could avoid the man, but when Hiko asked for his bookmark, she told him she would give it back later. When Hiko arrived home, he was consumed by so much guilt that he told Yuzuki that he was going to bed when she asked if he wanted dinner. The next morning, Hiko lay in bed looking like a low-budget vampire when he heard Ryo's voice coming from outside. He immediately got up and went to the door where he found Yuzuki speaking with Ryo. When Ryo noticed him, she spoke to him fondly, making Yuzuki wonder how they knew each other. Ryo then asked if Yuzuki was the girl he'd spoken about and made a comment about how Hiko was a disgusting pedo for having someone so young as his bride. As she spoke, Yuzuki inhaled her scent and recognized it as the same scent she had smelt in Hiko's room on his birthday. Hiko told her to watch the things she said, but she ignored him and said she understood he was keeping her as his side piece because he wasn't getting satisfaction from Yuzuki. But Ryo pulled out the bookmark and told Yuzuki that Hiko had given it to her. Hiko tried to take it from her, but she told him that if he wanted it, he had to make her his official mistress and treat her like a queen. Eventually she dropped the bookmark, but before Hiko could grab it, Yuzuki picked it up. Hiko quickly explained what had happened, and although Yuzuki said she believed him, she ripped it up before walking away with tears in her eyes. Hiko began picking up the pieces and told Ryo to get out of his house. After she left, Hiko took the pieces of the bookmark to his room, but hid it when Yuzuki came looking for him. As the day progressed, Yuzuki acted like she wasn't affected by what had happened earlier, which only made Hiko worried. While they were in the yard, the telephone suddenly rang, causing Yuzuki to nearly jump out of her skin in shock. After she picked it up, she informed Hiko that Tamako was the one on the line. When he picked up the phone, Tamako scolded him for not answering on time before telling him about all the things she'd been doing since she left. She also told him she'd called to say happy birthday and asked if Yuzuki had thrown him a party. Yuzuki tried to change the topic, but she insisted, so he told her what had happened. Tamako then told him that it was wrong of him to keep the truth from Yuzuki, and said that the meaning of the flower in his bookmark was unchanging love. She said Yuzuki had probably wanted to let him know of her love, but seeing Rio with it had broken her heart. After Heiko ended the call, he went back to his room to glue the bookmark back together. But when Yuzuki came to call him for dinner, she found him sleeping next to it. When Heiko woke up, she asked why he had kept the bookmark, and he told her that it was precious to him, before saying he understood what the flowers meant. Yuzuki then apologized for overreacting, but admitted that he had made her feel lonely, because he avoided her. Heiko apologized for his foolish decision, and allowed her to beat his chest with her tiny fist until she felt better. A few days later, Ryo's brothers found Heiko and Yuzuki in their yard and asked Heiko to teach them again, because he was very good at teaching. Heiko didn't see any harm in teaching them, so he agreed, but was surprised to see that they had brought some friends with them. However, Yuzuki encouraged him and even set up some tables for him to use while teaching the class. As time passed, Heiko realized that his class had grown, and as Yuzuki watched him from behind the door, she noticed that the children seemed to love him. Suddenly, Ryo arrived and began to tease her, so she asked why she had come, and she told her that she had brought snacks for the children. When she entered the room and greeted Heiko, he was surprised to see her, but she just pulled Yuzuki out of the room, saying they were going to prepare lunch. While they worked in the kitchen, Ryo apologized for what she did that day, but said that she didn't mind sharing Heiko, even though she'd only be the mistress, making Yuzuki scream. When the meal was ready, they took it to the children, and as Yuzuki and Heiko watched Ryo attend to the children, Yuzuki called her a good big sister. When evening came, the children and Ryo bid farewell to Yuzuki and Heiko. Some time passed, and it was finally New Year's Eve, so Heiko decided to help Yuzuki with her chores, but he eventually dozes off after a while. When he woke up, it was dark outside, so he went looking for Yuzuki and found her sitting outside. He quickly ran to her and hugged her to himself as he attempted to warm her up with the blanket on his body. When he realized that they were in an awkward position, he moved to sit beside her while still covering her body with the blanket. Yuzuki then admitted that she was thinking about what their future would be like now that she turned 15, making him realize that it was her birthday. Heiko told her that he couldn't marry her, because he knew she'd be miserable being with a worthless one-armed ogre. He said he wanted to make something of himself, and told her that he'd written to his father asking permission to attend high school, but hadn't gotten a reply. Yuzuki was happy to hear this, and told him that she wanted to continue staying by his side because it made her happy. They began acting like awkward teenagers. The next day, after the children left, Ryotaro stayed behind to tell Heiko that he would be leaving for Tokyo very soon as he was to become an apprentice. Since Heiko had the same emotional capacity as Siri, he just wished Ryotaro good luck and saw him off. Later that night, he admitted to Yuzuki that he had wanted to say something else to Ryotaro, but didn't know what to say as he had never been in a situation where he had to work to fend for his family. Just then, a knock sounded at the door, and when they opened the door, they saw a distressed Ryo standing there. She told them that Ryotaro was missing and begged them to help her look for him. While they ran around looking for the boy, Ryo recalled how Ryotaro had saved her from a man trying to assault her and began crying. Meanwhile, Yuzuki and Heiko found Ryotaro asleep in a bar, so when he woke up, Heiko told him that his sister was searching for him. The next moment, Ryotaro began to cry and told them that he didn't want to leave because he was scared he'd never see his family again. Heiko told him that it wasn't so and explained that if he worked hard, he could have some time off to go see his family. He even told him that he could invite his family to Tokyo and show them around. When Ryo arrived, she pushed Heiko out of the way and hugged her brother, asking if he was okay. Ryotaro assured her that everything was fine. On the day Ryotaro left for Tokyo, his siblings and friends came to say goodbye to him, and before he boarded the train, Heiko and Yuzuki arrived as well. Yuzuki gave him some sweets and Heiko told him to write to him. Ryotaro thanked him and told his siblings that he would invite them to see the city someday before hugging his sister. Sometime later, Heiko received a letter from his uncle, informing him that he was willing to support his plan to return to school since he'd heard it from Tamako. After reading the letter, immediately made a call to his uncle, thanking him for his support and promising to do his best. As the days progressed, Heiko threw himself into studying for his entrance exams, because he wished to start from the second grade. One day, one of the children showed Yuzuki the newspaper that had an article about the famous singer, Shiratori Kotori. The article said that the singer would perform at the train station that day, so the children convinced Heiko and Yuzuki to go with them. At the train station, a small crowd gathered to watch Kotori sing, and as Heiko watched her, he told Yuzuki he was glad he had come. For the next few days, Heiko continued studying and eventually took the entrance exams, which he passed. On his first day of school, he found out he wasn't the only one who had transferred schools, and during the class introduction, he learned that the other student was Shiratori Hikaru, the twin brother of Kotori. After Heiko introduced himself, the other students disliked him immediately because they thought he was as evil as the rest of his family. When it was time for PE, the students flocked to Hikaru, but ignored Heiko like he had the Black Plague. Unfortunately, he arrived late for the class, so the teacher punished the entire class by making them run laps for an hour, which only seemed to fuel their anger and hatred for him. During lunch, Heiko sat alone in class and ate, but he soon started crying and didn't notice Hikaru watching him. During the next class, Hikaru sat beside Heiko, and when he saw the drawing he'd made, he burst out laughing. He then showed Heiko his drawing so he could use it as a guide, but Heiko pointed out that a child in a daycare drew better than that. They soon began arguing until the teacher called them to order and scolded them for not taking the class seriously. Later that day, Heiko returned home with Hikaru, because the teacher had given them the assignment to draw one another. When Yuzuki saw him, she was very excited, causing Hikaru to say that she was just happy to see a real man after having to live with an ugly ape for so long. While the boys were drawing, Hikaru mentioned that Yuzuki was a nice person. When he realized that he was starting to sound like a true simp, he'd excused himself and went to get more tea. When got to the kitchen, Yuzuki asked him how his first day had gone, and he decided to lie to her, so she wouldn't be worried about him. However, he didn't know that Hikaru was outside listening to their conversation. After he returned to his room, he showed Hikaru his drawing, and Hikaru said he had a way of capturing people's smiles. He then said he'd overheard Hiko's conversation with Yuzuki, and told him that lying was never a good thing, even though he had good intentions. Just then, Yuzuki called them for dinner, and Hikaru ran out to meet her. While they were eating, Hikaru told Yuzuki that he'd come back because he liked her cooking. When he mentioned that Heiko and Yuzuki were his friends, Heiko was surprised because he didn't think he could have a friend. The next day, Hikaru came to visit Heiko and Yuzuki, and he brought his sister along with him, which made Yuzuki very happy. Kotori told Yuzuki that she had come to learn about love from her, because she'd been receiving questions about love in her magazine column. She said that since she couldn't be there for all of them, she wanted to write about love in the hopes that her song could reach her lovesick fans. She told him that Hikaru had told her that Yuzuki and Heiko were so in love, and would be the best people to teach her. Heiko couldn't believe the little shit had sold him out like that, but Hikaru turned away and started whistling. It was then decided that Kotori would stay with Heiko and Yuzuki until she came up with her new song. After Yuzuki showed her to her room, Hikaru bid his sister farewell and left. Kotori watched everything Yuzuki and Heiko did so closely that it made them uncomfortable. When Ryo accompanied the children to their lessons, they were surprised to see Kotori. Heiko then decided that instead of their usual lessons, Kotori would teach the children a song, and everyone, including Ryo, was happy to sing with her. The next day, while Heiko and Haruka walked home, the court asked Heiko about Kotori, and he told him that she was having a good time with Yuzuki and the children, but she was struggling to come up with her new song. He then suggested that Hikaru come to see her, but he refused and continued on his way home. Meanwhile, Yuzuki found Kotori rolling around in her room. When she went to give her some snacks, Kotori admitted that she was having trouble with her song, so she asked Yuzuki to tell her about how she met Heiko. Yuzuki then told her the story and admitted that she was scared to meet him at first, but when she got to know him, she realized he was a good person. She said that she always felt butterflies in her stomach whenever she saw him, and said she didn't know what she was feeling. Kotori told her it was love, and said she felt the same way about music. She then thanked Yuzuki for giving her some inspiration, and Yuzuki told her they looked forward to hearing the song. The next day during lunch, Heiko asked Hikaru why he was avoiding Kotori, so he told him that when they were little, they used to sing together until he fell sick. He said he gave up singing to focus on his recovery, but it took him 7 years to do so, and by that time, Kotori had already become famous. He admitted that he felt inferior next to her, which was why he refused to sing. Heiko told him that he understood how he felt because he too had become depressed and constantly prayed for death after his accident. However, when Yuzuki came into his life, she taught him how to open his heart, and he was grateful for that. A few days later, people gathered to listen to Kotori's new song, But before she took the stage, Hikaru said he had a song to perform. As he sang, Kotori began crying because she knew she had gotten her brother back, so she joined in to finish the song, after which she performed her new song. Later that evening, while Heiko and Yuzuki made their way home, Yuzuki almost confessed her feelings to him, but she changed her mind. She then asked him to teach her how to ride a bike, but he refused, saying he'd be the one to take her wherever she wanted to go. Summer break soon began, and after Heiko wrote a letter to his uncle, he went in search of Yuzuki and found her reading a letter from her friend Midori. When he sat down beside her, Yuzuki told him that Midori was pregnant and would be getting married soon. She also said that she had invited her to come to Tokyo so they could see each other one last time before she went to live with her husband. Heiko told her that she could go, but Yuzuki was hesitant because she was worried he wouldn't be able to manage without her. He'd assured her that he could take care of himself and reminded her that he had lived alone before she came into this life. He then took her to a shrine to pray for Midori's safe delivery, and while they were praying, Yuzuki told Heiko that they should also come to the shrine when they were going to have a baby. Her words made the virgin boy's face turn red, so made of an excuse to move away. When he returned, he gave her a charm to give to Midori, and she thanked him for being considerate. The next morning, Heiko took Yuzuki to the train station, and she informed him that she'd put Ryo in charge of making his food, which surprised him. Before boarding the train, Yuzuki told Heiko that she would miss him, and he said he would too, so she leaned in for a kiss. Heiko leaned in too, but quickly pulled away when he realized they were in public. However, he promised to give her many kisses when she returned. When Yuzuki arrived in Tokyo, Midori met her outside the train station, and the both of them hugged each other as they cried. They first went to a coffee shop to chat and talk about their lives, and Yuzuki gave Midori the charm Heiko had given to her. Later on, Midori took Yuzuki home, and they spent the rest of the day doing things together. At night, Midori asked Yuzuki when she was getting married, and she told her that Heiko wasn't ready yet, but said she would stay by his side no matter what. The next day, as they walked around town, Midori told Yuzuki that she was glad that she was happy, after which they reminisced about the old days. Meanwhile, back at home, Heiko was teaching Ryo's brothers, but all he could think of was Yuzuki and how much he wanted to see her. Ryo soon joined them so they could eat lunch, and while they were eating there was a sudden earthquake. Luckily, they were unharmed, but when they arrived at the village they saw that almost everything was destroyed. Heiko tried to help a family trapped under some rubble, but the villagers told him to leave since he was useless with only one hand. As he watched this scene before him, he suddenly became worried for Yuzuki's safety, as he had no idea how badly Tokyo was affected. He soon returned home, but curled up in a ball as he started thinking of all the terrible things that could have happened to Yuzuki. Suddenly he heard a sound, and when he went to check, when the cat jumped into his arms, he noticed a letter addressed to him, which he read. In the letter, Yuzuki said she had knitted a scarf and some gloves for him as a birthday present. She said she had also made one for herself so they could wear it whenever they rode his bike. After reading the letter, Heiko realized that he was quick to assume the worst, knowing fully well that Yuzuki would have never done that. As he got dressed and made some food, he realized that he was in love with Yuzuki, so he headed out to find her. On his way, he met Ryo and the children, and Ryo said she wanted to come with him because she was worried about Ryotaro. When he asked them about the state of the village, they told him that a lot of people were hurt and some people had lost their homes, so he instructed the children to gather the villagers who had lost their homes and take them to his house. He said they could make use of the medicine and help themselves to whatever they found in the kitchen. After the children promised to do as he asked, he and Ryo began their journey to Tokyo, which Heiko told her would take 2.5 days. When they arrived in Tokyo, the situation was bad, with most of the buildings destroyed. Those who were around were trying to get to the train station as it was being used as a first aid center. Heiko ran around frantically as he called out Yuzuki's name, but got no response until someone pulled on his scarf. When he turned around, he realized it was Tamako, and before he could tell her why he had come, he fainted. Heiko woke up later to find his uncle beside him, and the man explained that most medical teams had been dispatched to Tokyo to help. He told Heiko that Yuzuki had explained the situation to him, and said that it would be impossible to find Yuzuki in his state. Heiko insisted that he could manage as he believed Yuzuki was still alive, and didn't want to leave her alone for too long. His uncle then said that he had changed from the sad, untrusting boy who had survived a terrible accident. He added that Tamako had changed too, and said he was sure it was because of Yuzuki, so he told Heiko that he would love to meet her when he found her. Just as Hiko and Rio were about to head out, Tomeko ran to them, saying she would join in the search. So they all agreed to return to the station once they found Ryotaro and Yuzuki. Hiko and Tomeko visited many places, but couldn't find any clues to help them locate Yuzuki. When they stopped for a water break, they overheard some people talking about those who had lost their lives. This made Hiko start entertaining the idea that Yuzuki might not be alive, but he stopped when Tomeko began to cry, saying she wanted to see Yuzuki again. Hiko comforted his sister and promised her that Yuzuki would be fine, and as they continued their search, they saw a woman standing on the bridge. Thinking she wanted to jump off it, they rushed to stop her, but she assured them that she was only there to offer a prayer. When Hiko noticed what she was holding, he realized she was Midori, so he asked if Yuzuki was around somewhere. Midori told him that they had gotten separated, and she began to cry and blame herself. Hiko assured her that she wasn't to blame and asked Tamako to take care of her, while he continued the search for Yuzuki. Feeling motivated now that he knew Yuzuki was still alive, and eventually ran into the Karu and Kotori. They told him they had come to Tokyo to help people by singing and providing food, so Hiko explained that he was searching for Yuzuki. They promised to search for her as well, and Kotori gave him some rice balls before he left. As Hiko continued his search, he took a bite of the rice ball, and he became lost in his thoughts about Yuzuki, when a young boy slipped the remaining rice balls from his hand. The boy's little sister came running towards Hiko, but she accidentally tripped. Her brother returned and begged Hiko not to hurt his sister, and Hiko assured him that he would do no such thing as he also had a little sister. He then allowed them to eat the rice balls, and as they ate he learned that they had been separated from their parents. They also told him that their big sister was hurt, so Hiko asked them to take him to her. When they arrived at the almost collapsed house, they let him know that the girl wasn't related to them. When the little girl mentioned that the girl's name was Yuzuki, Hiko rushed in and found Yuzuki unconscious. Hiko was filled with joy that she was alive, so he gave the children directions to the Karu and Kotori's camp. With the children's help, he tied Yuzuki to his body and ran to the first aid center. Meanwhile, Yuzuki was stuck in a dream world, but when she heard Hiko calling out to her, she began running towards the sound of his voice, as she didn't want to lose him. Soon, she opened her eyes and the first thing she saw was Hiko, so began to cry, saying she loved him as he consoled her. She was surprised to see everyone gathered in one place, so they explained what had happened to her. She then asked about the children she had helped, and they assured her that they were doing all right. Hiko's uncle introduced himself to Yuzuki, and thanked her for taking care of his nephew when he had no one. Tomeko and Rio got into a petty argument over who deserved to take care of Yuzuki, but as Yuzuki watched them, she was grateful they had all come to see her. Hiko then brought some porridge for her, and while she ate, Hiko's father and elder sister arrived, and told his brother to come with him as he needed him to treat Hiko's elder brother, who had been injured. His uncle refused, saying he had nothing to do with their family, but Hiko's elder sister reminded him that he was mingling with Hiko and Tamako. This made their father ask why Hiko was in Tokyo, so his uncle explained that he had come looking for the one person who loved him unconditionally. He said that Hiko had become stronger than he was, and he was a better person than he was before. He then gave Hiko's father and other doctors contact information. When Hiko's father and sister turned to leave, Hiko stopped them and told his father he was glad that he was alive. After Yuzuki got better, she, Hiko, and the others stayed in Tokyo for a few more days to help his uncle before they returned home. Some days after returning home, Yuzuki and the others threw a surprise birthday party for Hiko. Later on after the party, Hiko and Yuzuki went to the mountain to say a prayer at the Myanmar statue. While they were there, Yuzuki confessed that she had wanted to tell Hiko about her feelings earlier, but she was shy. Hiko teased her about it, but said he wanted to learn to cherish her the same way she did him. See you guys in the next video.